Hello, happy Easter, Fort Hays friends. It is a very snowy day here in West Central Missouri. My name is Shay Twinter, and this is my presentation for Module 5. The article, Barriers to Using Web 2.0 in 21st Century Schools. I'm not going to lie, I Googled exactly what Web 2.0 meant because I had a feeling of what it was, but I was not sure if it was something else. And after having a discussion with my husband, who is an educator, who also didn't know what the term Web 2.0 meant, it was enlightening to find out exactly what Web 2.0 was. Uh, when I first started reading it, the first thing that struck me was odd is that they give charter schools as an example. And I think charter schools are great at trying out new innovations, but at the same point in time, they're not governed by state standards, so they're more free. Um, those of us in public education, we don't have that luxury. They also can handpick the students that are in their classes, whereas in public education, we're going to have kids from all kinds of backgrounds, English as a second language, kids on IEPs, kids with behavioral problems, lots of differences in socioeconomic backgrounds, whereas a charter school can pick and choose. And so therefore, I find it hard to take the data from a charter school and immediately apply it to a public school setting. I also think that there's not a lot of data on these charter schools. Some of them are very new, and some of them have not had enough students pass through and watch them as they go past high school to see just exactly how these students are performing. So it makes me cautious. It doesn't mean that the data isn't good. It just means that we have to be careful how we apply it. I really like how it talks about how Web 2.0 curriculum is designed to instruct students in real world situations. I looked up exactly what soft skills meant because I hear a lot, oh, we need to teach kids about soft skills and I wanted to make sure again that I had in my brain the right thing, and soft skills are the way that students interact with others. And I think that by doing it this way, it's easier for us to kind of set up those situations where they have to work on their soft skills. But it's also giving them, hey, you're going to really use this in your lifetime. I hate to tell my algebra teacher that I don't ever use algebra, but I don't as a music teacher. Maybe in a different situation I would. I use it to help the kids that come in for tutoring if I happen to be covering a class. But I like the idea of focusing on what students are actually using in the real world. I would also like to see it go over students that don't take what has become the normal path and go to college. Students who decide to do different training, internships, or you know, if they decide to work in the automobile. I ran into a student just the other day when I was getting my oil changed who was training to be a diesel tech and was going to earn double my salary in half the education time. And I think it's important that as more and more students exit the college, no offense, college people, but as more and more students exit college with huge amounts of debt um, and no jobs because they're overqualified or there's just not enough jobs, that we need to make sure that we're preparing our students for the future that they really want and to make sure that they're prepared in all the ways. Um, she lists a whole bunch of barriers preventing the integration of Web 2.0 tools, and it kind of struck me as weird that she listed teachers saying that they have no time as an excuse, and I I don't feel like it's an excuse. I think we're being realistic. We are asked to do more and more every year. Now, not only am I in charge of delivering the curriculum, also in charge of assessing. I'm in charge of collecting all the data and interpreting it. But then I'm also responsible to make sure that the student is being fed, that they have clothing, that they have, that they're safe at home, that their mental status is stable. There's more that I'm doing every single day with more students. I have 300 students right now as a music teacher in the middle school level. And it's not an excuse. It's realistic. And sometimes negative points are not just gripe sessions, they're actual real concerns. She talks about how there's no time, there's a lack of training, limited resourcing, limited resources, limited the training and the equipment. Um, my questions for her is she's her solution is just to, oh well, you can research it here, you can do this, and I'm like, with what time am I to research this? I would love to integrate it more into my classroom, but I can't create more day, more hours in a day, and so that's my limit. Um, how do we regulate it safely? That's a big concern with students at my level because I teach middle school. It is easy for them to get into an area that's not safe for them, and it's easy for them to be unsafe with others. When we talk about real world applications, what are those? What does that look like? Don't just, put it under the balloon term of real world applications. Are we talking about problem solving? What type of problem solving? Are we talking about working with others? Is that just a fancy way of saying group work? Um, I I would like to see a better definition of that. Um, what about when the technology fails? So many times I've finally had to give up on technology because I was always having to go to my backup plan, and I was doing as little as possible just because I couldn't it was not reliable. Um, I think those are all my notes about this particular one. The next one is 7 barriers that obstruct technology adoption education. I like how he said lack of or no vision. It's very important that it's specific, not just here's a computer, go for it. It needs to be why am I using this computer? Is it replacing something? Is it to be creative? And is this vision something that can be carried if there's turnover? My school has had a lot of turnover in the last couple of years. We've redistricted. My entire admin team from last year is gone. And so I'm seeing the importance of having a strong vision that can be carried through even if there is turnover. I do believe there is a change in teachers' roles. Um, I like how they mentioned that it's moving to project versus inquiry-based instruction and away from direct instruction. No longer is it here, sit and take notes. It's more of a now how would you do this? Now where would you go from there? Flipped classroom where the students are the center of learning. And I was listening to some um, some other articles, and they were talking about how the students get to kind of derive their education. And part of me went, these are the students who are eating Tide Pods right now. So I think it's important that yes, they drive, but at the same point in time, we are the adults in the room. We are the experts in the room, and there still needs to be a heavy dose of teacher direction. But I do think that students they need to be able to start realizing that you're going to have to put this to use. We always have to consider the achievement gap. There's always going to be one. Technology helps, I think, in that to provide accommodations. I know in my room I can post something on my Google Classroom and hey, guess what? You can go home and practice this for the test as many times as you want. Here's additional links. Here's additional PowerPoints. Here's additional practices. Here's a video. And it has been very beneficial. But I've also noticed a lot of students who don't access it. And that's rather worrisome as well. I think some of my lower economic students who tend to use the technology for drill, it talked about lower economic status students using it for more drill and less for creative issues. But I find that a lot of my lower economic situation students need the drill. And because of the technology that we're providing to them, they can get what they need. Now, there's always the issue of not having internet at home. Um, but I would love to see a partnership with the community where, businesses that offer Wi-Fi, have a teen hour where kids are encouraged to come in and use the internet. My library does. They do a great job. They have a teens corner. It's reserved for them. Like any other patron can't use it at that time. And there are ways to fix it, but at the same point in time, I think we also need to get parents and students on board as well and get them invested in it. I agree that promising innovation, teachers aren't rewarded for, adding extra skills in the technology department into their lessons. It's time consuming. it's difficult, especially if the technology doesn't work and, they're not rewarded by any other means other than, hey, this is great, it works, for personal use. There's always going to be a lack of finances, although I am seeing that it's a lot more affordable now. Even if you go to buy a TV, the TV that I bought 10 years ago is so much cheaper now. Actually, it's probably out of date and probably not even there now, but it's a lot cheaper. Um, Thinking beyond textbooks, textbooks don't necessarily cover all the state standards, and so teachers are finding ways to supplement or create their own, which is another article later on. And then finding the infrastructure, keeping the infrastructure, keeping it maintained. Our technology department at my school works so hard, and I don't think I could. I mean, there's no way. There's no way we could do it without them. The next article was about the digital divide, talking about the quarter of the nation that is without broadband. This one kind of struck me as weird because why are they speaking of being off grid as if it's life ending? I grew up in the country. We had no Wi-Fi. We had no cable, and I played in the creek and I played outside, and I still feel like I was well prepared for my life. I agree that that was a few years ago, but at the same point in time, I think I don't like the fact that they're talking about mandating internet. You can't compare it to running water or electricity. Um, it is it's going to be different. A student who has had internet at home is going to have different skills than a student who doesn't have internet at home. But at the same point in time, they're talking about the students in the Appalachian Mountains. Maybe those kids don't need that type of internet training. Maybe they're not looking to compete on the global level. Maybe they want to work in a diesel shop, like my student friend who is going to be very successful. And I think it's really important that we keep that in mind. Yes, having affordable internet is going to be beneficial to these students, but let's not mainstream them into higher education if that higher education is not going to lead them to their skills, the skill set that they need to be successful. This article, Open Educational Resources, was really interesting because I created my own curriculum and I wrote everything. I supplemented it with things that I found that followed it, but the basis of the curriculum that I use is something that I wrote. It's an online movement to share free educational resources, and it allows teachers to customize or supplement. I've seen a lot of teachers use something that they found on Teachers Pay Teachers or something like that in order to meet their state standards and to keep it current. The hard thing I see is just defining time to research what curriculum is valid and usable. What works in Massachusetts may not work in Missouri or in California. And sifting through everything takes time, which we've now already talked about. So teachers have no time, which is horrible, but it's part of the job. Um, do I feel the digital divide can be resolved? I don't think it can be resolved. I think the divide can be shortened. I think we could add bridges here. I think we could backfill a little here, and we can get closer to reaching more students. I think the one-on-one initiative really got us close, but we're still going to have those students who can't afford internet or who are not going to have internet at their house. There's going to be areas where there is no internet. Um, there's always going to be the issue with keeping the students safe online versus making sure they have what they need. I was researching the Dixie Chicks because we do a pop music lesson, and the internet kept blocking anything that I was looking for because of the word chicks. And I found that it was hilarious, but it was true. And I was at school. I had to wait until I got home to do the research on it, and it was an interesting barrier. What skill sets do you feel 21st century students must acquire prior to graduation? Once again, those soft skills, how students work together with other students, that interpersonal area, work skills. I have a lot of students who struggle with persistence, seeing it to the end and actually achieving the goal. They need to be goal-minded, and they need to be honest, especially in the digital era. They need whatever basic skills they are to prepare them for college. I should have written prepare them for college or whatever post-secondary life that they are looking to achieve. What impact has the global economy had on my personal life?